All right. I think it's time to kick off. It's time to kick off this webinar tonight. Here in Australia and this morning in Lagos, Nigeria, and in South Africa. So, if you're joining us today, we want to specially welcome you to today's edition of our special webinar. And I just want to start with an apology for starting off quite late in comparison to when we wanted to start today's session. We are really sorry. Situations beyond our control, as usual, issues with technicalities and all that. But I'm happy that we are back up now and really grateful for your patience, and we hope that we'll make it up to you by giving you a very wonderful session today. So if you're joining us, we are really grateful for sparing the time to be with us today. We will be having a very wonderful session today, looking at the state of Agtech in Africa, and we've asked some experts to come and share with us today on this particular topic, and each will be dealing with a specific aspect of the overall theme of the state of Agtech in Africa. So we want to indulge you to stay with us and relax and have a wonderful session. So today we have three speakers, like I mentioned, and we'll be introducing them shortly. So if you were with us, you're going to have an opportunity to ask questions, probably as the speakers speak. You can use the chat section. Wherever platform you're joining from, you have an option to use the chat section to ask your questions. And if you're addressing any question to any specific speaker, whether it is Flo or Akin or Deji, we hope that Deji will join us very soon. But if not, we'll still be able to manage because we have a slide with us. But if you have any question in the process of each of the presentation, use the chat section to drop a question, and if it's specifically for anybody, let that person know in the comment section as well. And so the essence of this event or this webinar is to look at the state of Agtech in Africa. I was reading a report a few weeks back rather, about funding and investment in Agtech sector, a global report on the funding that's been going into Agtech over the past years. And surprisingly, since 2022, there's been a huge drop in investment in the Agtech sector from all across the globe. And the impact of that drop is mostly felt in Africa. And what that means is that Agtech entrepreneurs and startups in Africa are probably having a tough time with finding the funds, the finance they need to solve the problems that they want to solve. And it is not the same with other sectors. It's not what's happening with other aspects of entrepreneurship and all that. And so it's for us at AgriCatalyst, being an entrepreneur support organization that's focused specifically on Agtech entrepreneurs and startups. That's a worry for us, and that's the essence of this webinar: to have a chat, understand what's really happening with the funding landscape, understand what are the key drivers that are driving investors to either support Agtech entrepreneurs or not even support them at all, and what are the innovative ways or strategies that can be applied by Agtech entrepreneurs to make sure that they sustain investment in the sector across Africa and even beyond. So that's the essence of this webinar: to have a chat, have a conversation about what's really happening and how we can move forward to provide more support to Agtech entrepreneurs in Africa and beyond. And so I'll just quickly introduce our speakers to us, and then we'll take it from there. So our first speaker for this webinar is Deji. Deji is a partner with Sahel Capital, a food and an agriculture focused private investment firm in sub-Saharan Africa. Sahel Capital manages the Fund for Agriculture Financing in Nigeria and the Social Enterprise Fund for Agriculture in Africa. Deji co-leads CEFA, an impact first fund investing in agribusinesses that provide direct and indirect benefits to smallholder farmers across 13 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. In addition, Deji leads investment in portfolio management for CEFA and manages FIFA portfolios, two of which were recently exited. He is a director on the board of one of the portfolio companies. Before that, Deji spent 3 years in various senior roles with Syngenta Crop Protection AG. As the head of operations, he played a significant role in the formal opening of Syngenta Nigeria. He later became the global portfolio operations manager for one of the company's business units in Switzerland. He started his career by building systems and processes for Procter and Gamble across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. It is an African Asia Impact Investing Fellow and a Center for African Leaders in Agriculture Fellow. He studied chemical engineering at the Obafemi Awolowo University, where he graduated with a first-class degree and has an MBA from Institute Business School. Our second speaker is Flo Mosoane. Flo is a passionate builder of the African innovation ecosystem and an AgriTech startup founder. She is the founder of Easy Chicken Club, a distributed network of modular poultry abattoirs and digital platform for small-scale chicken producers. Flo is also the program lead for the Africa Early Stage Investor Summit, which is the leading community of Africa-focused early stage investors globally. Flo is the coordinator of Future Agro Challenge in South Africa, a global movement for agripreneurs creating local change with global impact. Flo has served as a mentor in the past to Agtech entrepreneurs within our pre-accelerator program. And our third speaker for today is Akinsulire is innovative business leader with a strong track record in innovation management, strategic planning, capacity building, and enterprise development. Over the past 12 years, he has championed more than 30 impact-driven programs driving innovation across Africa. These initiatives have transformed the lives of over 40,000 young individuals, entrepreneurs, and undeserved women in 25 Nigerian states and in 9 other African countries. Akinwande is at the forefront of innovation, steering the startup support unit of Co-Creation Hub, a Pan-African innovation enabler. Leveraging his rich experience, he nurtures and scales innovation startups through incubation, acceleration, and growth-focused programs continent-wide. Additionally, Akin's pivotal roles on the boards of directors and as an advisor to multiple ventures and not-for-profit organizations in Africa underscore his commitment to innovation's expansive reach. Recognized with multiple awards, including 2019 Most Outstanding Business Consultant and 2020 Startup Consultant of the Year, Akin is a certified management consultant by the International Council of Management Consulting Institute. His global education from institutes like the University of Pennsylvania and Aston Business School uniquely positions him to provide cutting-edge innovation consulting and high-impact enterprise development, setting the standard for businesses in both developed and developing countries. So these great people that we're going to be listening to today, and I believe that staying with us and listening to them would be of great value to every one of us. So before we have the speakers come and share, I'd just like to quickly introduce AgriCatalyst Innovation to to us for those who may not have come across AgriCatalyst before now. I think it would be important to get to know who we are. So, AgriCatalyst Innovation is actually an entrepreneur support organization in Nigeria that is focused on enabling growth for agri-food tech entrepreneurs and startups in Nigeria. So our main focus is agri-food tech, and we came about this some years back when we did a survey of agri-food tech entrepreneurs in Nigeria, asking questions about the kind of support that they receive both from government and from the private sector in comparison to other entrepreneurs in other sectors. And we realized that there is a huge gap of support for agri-food tech entrepreneurs, and that gave birth to agri-food tech, AgriCatalyst Innovations as an agri-food tech specific innovation hub or entrepreneur support organization trying to enable growth for agri-food tech entrepreneurs in the space. So our vision is basically to be the leading ESO and business service provider enabling growth and innovation for agri-food tech business entrepreneurs in Africa, so that they can be empowered to become profitable businesses that address key challenges of food security in Africa. We want to be able to continuously deliver efficient and cutting-edge platforms and solutions to catalyze growth for these entrepreneurs and startups all across Africa. So we focus on food tech, like I said, we focus on food tech, Agtech, and agri-food production, basically. This is the area and the space within which we work mostly. So as part of what we offer business development activities or programs. We provide tools and resources to help startups and entrepreneurs to grow. We try to give them access to world-class mentors through our different programs that we run. And there are also opportunities for investment for agri-food tech entrepreneurs who might, be eligible or be qualified to have access to such opportunities. So, and we're open to partnership. We're open to, all kinds of programs that will help support agri-food tech entrepreneurs, better in Nigeria and across Africa. So if in any case, anyone who is on the call, on the webinar today, is interested and wants to know more, or anyone who is going to listen or watch the replay of this recording at the end of the day would want to know more or have any question, just feel free to contact us at the email that's provided, info@agricatalyst.com, and we will be very, very excited to speak to you as well. So we look forward to hearing from you if the need be. Okay, so that's all about AgriCatalyst and trying to quickly introduce what the program is all about. And so Deji, who is supposed to be the first speaker, is not here today, but he has sent in his slide and he has asked that we run through the slides for him. He's unavoidably absent. We had everything in place, but there's been a little bit of change with his plans, and that's the reason why he's not here today. He might still be able to probably join along the line, but we won't be able to wait until then, so we'll just kick off. So for Deji's presentation today, it was supposed to be on funding and investment landscape for African Agtech ecosystem. So this is supposed to be the first presentation, and that will be followed by the second speaker, who is Flo, and then the third speaker will be Akin. And so for Deji, it was supposed to be on funding and investment landscape for agri-food tech, African Agtech ecosystem. So looking at the current state of funding and investment in African Agtech, like I mentioned, the latest report on funding in agri-food tech ecosystem, especially in Africa, shows that um, there's been growth for some years, up until, in fact, over the past 10 years, there's been a continuous growth, but up until 2022, when the investment started going down. So as of 2022 was about $632 million of investment across tech businesses and startups in Africa. But by the first quarter of 2023, investment had gone down to just about 99 million. And that's in comparison to 429 million in the first half, or the first half of 2022. So this is a huge gap, almost 300%, if not more than a drop in what was invested just within the space of a year. And that should be a concern to everybody who is working in this space, everybody who's working in this sector. To have that amount of decline means that there is need for something to be done quickly, or else agri-food tech entrepreneurs will end up, going out of business. So the decline has been due to certain uncertain macroeconomic conditions, rising interest rates all over the world for the past 2-3 years. Now there's been some rise in interest rates, which has been affecting businesses and the ability of people to trust business to be able to invest in them. Inflation pressure has also been there as well, and so all these things, work together to affect or impact investors' confidence on trying to invest in the sector. But for the funding that has been received, majority of them has been coming from Catapult, Accelerator, Y Combinator, Mercy Corps Venture, Launch Africa, and ARAF as well. The top sectors attracting investments in the sector has mainly been the in-store retail, the restaurant tech, and the agribusiness marketplace, as well as startups that are using fintech to develop or to create solutions for the agri-food system. So talking about main players in the African Agtech ecosystem, of course, we have the incubators, accelerators, investors, companies that are, working within the ecosystem to make things work. And we're happy to be part of those who are making things work within the ecosystem. You agree with me, if you understand what is happening in the ecosystem, that there are no very many, there are general incubators or accelerators that are, they combine a lot of things. They have portfolios of people working in fintech, working in health tech, working in edtech, and also have a few that are working in agtech as well. So the few that are like that, but specifically incubators and accelerators that are directly focused on agtech are very, very few. And that is also something that we need to think about on what to do to, move that section forward. So while there's been, some activities across the investment sectors or stages, most of the investment in the 2022 went to growth stage entrepreneurs or businesses, and followed by debt. And so that's also something that we need to think about as well. How about those who are at the idea stage or early stage, trying to find their feet? Those guys still need funding as well to be able to survive or thrive and be able to make the kind of impact that they want to make. So if most of the investment is going to the growth stage, Series B to C, funding, then it will be more difficult for people at the idea stage and the early stage to be able to gain traction. And that's one of the reasons why we as an institute or as an organization, we have a lot of focus on very, very early stage, idea stage entrepreneurs and startups. Some key investments have been done by categories, like we mentioned, agribusiness marketplace. So Thrive Agric in Nigeria has been favored. Apollo Agric and Farmer Line in Ghana as well. The midstream technologies like Max AB and Vendis, and the in-store and retail tech like Wasoko and Keeper. Nigeria, in terms of countries that have benefited mostly from those investment, we have Nigeria and Kenya leading in the investment. I should have expected maybe South Africa to be there as well, but yeah, it is what it is. So, what are the major challenges and probably the opportunities that are available in the African AgTech space? So talking about the challenges, challenge of lack of credit history, if startups don't have a history of how they've managed funds in the past, then it becomes very difficult to be trusted, um, you know, by investors. And again, this is, you might not be able to have a credit history if you're an ID stage startup or a very early stage startup that is still um, trying to find your feet and all that. But that's a challenge and definitely must have to be solved. So probably the idea could be for early stage and idea stage to keep record of whatever it is that they're, even if it is funders' contribution that is being used to run the business, having a good history of what is happening with, credit, what is coming and what is going out is very, very important. Poor exit outlook. So if the investors are not able to see any future where they can, catch in at an exit stage, then it becomes also very difficult for them to be able to think of investing in the space. Um, and a lot of factors could affect that for the agtech startups entrepreneurs. The business of a farmer of an agriculturist depends on a lot of things that can change at any point in time, unpredictable changes that could happen, and that could be a factor that could affect ability for them to have a very good exit outlook. Behavior is also a factor that needs to be considered and could be a challenge if the team leading the startup or a group of entrepreneurs working together to build a business don't have the appropriate character that is required, to convince an investor to be able to put funds in the poor infrastructure and lack of skilled labor. So people are talking about AI in the past, months and years now, and one of the things that I've been thinking about is how is the agtech ecosystem, positioning itself in terms of scale to be able to, stand the challenge that might come in the future with the growth and development of AI. So, if issues like that are not properly, looked into, then investment will continue to be a problem. So AI is not only for people in fintech or edtech or health tech. There are a lot of AIs that are, applied in that tech space. A few weeks back, we visited a dairy farm that was using a technology, a virtual fencing technology that herds animals from the paddock to the milking shed. Nobody needs to do anything, and it's a virtual fence. You don't even see the fence, but the fence is there, and it's a matter of punching one or two buttons on the app on the phone of the farmer or the farm manager, um, and then he can easily shift the position of the fencing and all that. So these things are there, but how they are penetrating into African space is what we're not very sure of at the moment, and so that could be an issue of having the right skill to be able to tap into them and develop solutions that will be useful to farmers at the long run. But having said that, there are still opportunities to improve food security, increase access to market, improve financial inclusion in rural areas, and create jobs. So these are areas that there are a lot of opportunities, and AgTech the Agtech space in Africa can tap into all that. Given the state of food security across the continent, there is also an increasing appetite for transformation and impact in the food and agriculture sector. So yeah, the continent is ripe, is ready, and we need to do all we can as people who are working in the ecosystem to support these startups and entrepreneurs to tap into these opportunities. So the future projection for African Agtech ecosystem, according to Deji, is that one, we expect continued growth in African Agtech ecosystem as the macro situation eases and investor appetite improves. So probably he was talking about the macroeconomic situation that he started with. Also, as those situations ease and investor appetite improve, then we'll continue to see growth in the African Agtech space. Given the myriad of challenges facing the agriculture sector, innovation is expected to pioneer leaps in the industry, hence increased adoption of agriculture technology. So just like I mentioned, in the farm we said a few weeks ago, using virtual fencing and things like that. Might not be specifically virtual fencing, but there are a lot of innovation that can be tailored. And I guess maybe when Akin will talk to us, he will highlight some of those innovation. But the point is that there are innovation that can be tailored specifically to our environment, our continent, and that can help to increase impact of the African Agtech ecosystem on the food sector or food security in general. So entrepreneurs must focus on revenue growth and profitability to attract investment. Unit cost must make sense. So Deji is concluding that one, the African Agtech ecosystem slowed down in 2023, and like we've seen from the data that was presented. So entrepreneurs that are focused on the bottom line will continue to win. Ecosystem comprises Agtech startups, incubators, accelerators, and investors. The sector faces challenges, but also provides opportunity to improve food security, increase access to market, and create jobs. And lastly, we hope and expect that we'll continue to see growth in the African Agtech space in the future. So for me, as a person, and for us as an organization at Catalyst Innovation, we are very hopeful that things will change and we'll continue to see growth in the Agtech ecosystem in the continent. So we'll invite you again to come and join us in creating that change that we expect or desire to see in the coming future. Thanks very much for listening, and that's where we'll draw the curtain on Deji's presentation. So we'll move on to the next speaker, Flo. And I'll bring up Flo's presentation. All right. So Flo, your presentation is up, and I can help to scroll for you.
Yes.
So thanks very much, Flo, for joining us. Really appreciate your time. And I hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Ape. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. And I can see the presentation as well. Thank you so much. So my task today was to share my view on what I believe the key drivers for upscaling investments in agri-tech is in Africa. And thank you so much for the invitation, Ape. Since we started working together quite a number of years ago now, it seems so long ago. In what was it? 2019.
2019. Yep.
Yes, when we first joined Future Agro Challenge, it kind of has been a journey of learning since then. to kind of, as ecosystem builders, position ourselves better to support future generations of agri-tech innovators and innovators generally in the agri-food sector. So thank you once again.
Thank
We can
you.
go to the next slide. Okay. So, I mean, I appreciate more than enough about me. If, if anyone is wondering why I suddenly have sprouted hair, I think we know that as African ladies have some secret potions that we use. But broadly, my name is Flo. I operate generally in the agri-food tech space. I am the co-founder and CEO of Easy Chicken Club, which is an agri-tech startup in the poultry sector. It is a distributed network of modular abattoirs and a platform really for smallholder broiler producers in Africa. I also operate from a small hub based in Joburg. That's the Bulimi Climate Smart Agriculture Hub. And what that is really is an initiative to develop systems or ways in which smallholder farmers can become more climate smart. And we will touch a little bit on what climate smart really means in our context a little bit later. I've also mentioned that I am now for the third year now, the program lead for the Africa Early Stage Investor Summit. And this is a community of early stage investors, whether it's angel investors, venture capital fund managers in seed, Series A stage, or even global development corporations, the different DFIs across the world who are really extensively involved in that early stage that I referred to, where we see a little bit of a chasm of capital allocation. I also do a little bit of mentoring. I have worked with APES team in a program there, and right now I mentor a few businesses in the entrepreneurship programs run by Fetula Moho, which is a company based here in South Africa in Cape Town. Next slide, please, Ape. So I wanted to start today's chat really by dissecting what this topic seeks to uncover, right? And I can start with what AgriTech in Africa essentially highlights. One, the fact that agriculture broadly in Africa is an incredible opportunity for development. I mean, we still have uh, the 60% of the world's arable land in Africa. Um, our location also kind of highlights our nature as an agrarian society. 70% of our food is produced by smallholder farmers. So, unlike other nations, we do see some level of industrialization, but not as extensive as one would find in other continents. So this area of agri-tech in Africa is in itself a unique opportunity based on our nature as a continent and our nature as an agrarian society. The next word to dissect there, the idea of investment, is worth a mention because, as you can imagine, agriculture, food touches on various areas that have humanitarian implications. Now, then it invites the question of whether a more commercial approach to solutioning around agri-food, whether it's food security or other issues around there, or a more humanitarian approach to solutioning is best. But by definition, if we are discussing this, we are essentially agreeing amongst ourselves that we probably need to lean more into more commercial approaches to solutioning in this space. Thinking about the idea of upscaling tells us a couple of things, and our first presentation kind of alluded to some of that as well, that there are already fairly notable investments in the agritech space in Africa, and a few examples were mentioned. There was a dip in South Africa specifically last year in agritech. And when I can think of some of the innovations that have come out of here, like, for example, air robotics and Cooler, they probably had their funding rounds a little bit before last year. But those are some of the more notable innovations that have scaled out of South Africa. But, it is really exciting to see what innovators in Nigeria and in Kenya and other East African countries are doing, that we can all learn from, really. So really, there is already some activity, and there is clearly a growing interest for various reasons from different investors who see Africa as an extraordinary frontier, whether it's the opportunities that are available or the challenges that we experience, which drive that need to create scalable solutions, which investors are, of course, interested in. So, drilling down on today's point of discussion, the key drivers. So, today I do hope to share a bit of a view on what I believe are the drivers that need to be focused on. There are really quite a number of drivers that make agri-tech and food tech investing in Africa attractive, but we will only focus on a couple that we should probably highlight in the interest of time. Next slide, please, Ape. So let's look at these 5 kind of broad categories of drivers that make agri-tech investing in our region attractive. The first one, of course, being our unique demographic kind of situation. We are a young population. We are a very fast growing population. We are a population that still has significant challenges with food security. So really, this just paints a picture of a need to have solutions, and investment will always flow to where those solutions need to be. If we can go back a little bit, Ape, please, before we come here. Of course, some of the technological advances, and Ape alluded to some of those as well, create an opportunity for investors to come in, like the proliferation of mobile technology, and of course, other things like fintech, which is huge here in Africa, which create an enabling environment for agri-tech and food tech businesses to operate. There's been a lot of movement towards a little bit of an easing and a welcoming of foreign direct investment, particularly in the area of infrastructure development, which is a huge constraint when one considers investing in agri-tech or food tech. And recently, one of the more important drivers has been the development imperative, the global development imperative, in fact, where we see the coming in of developmental organizations, or DFIs, who have an impact mandate across the world, and Africa presents them that opportunity to achieve that. And lastly, climate change, and this is what I want to double click on in the remaining few minutes that I have, the idea of focusing on climate change as an opportunity to drive investment in agri-tech. We can move to the next slide, please, for me to expand a little bit more. So, agriculture, or in fact, the agriculture space broadly, is critical in the area of climate change, in that climate change is an extraordinary risk, of course, because we know particularly smallholder farmers really sit at the coalface of climate change challenges, whether it's a a change in rainfall seasons, or even availability of water, or really all the things that are affected by climate change, have an extraordinarily increased impact on the types of farmers that we have in our society, which is the smallholder producer. On the other hand, because these producers are the ones that are responsible for producing the majority of our food, it also presents an extraordinary opportunity for investors to come in and unlock some of that opportunity. Next slide, please, Ape. So, the thing that stands out when one thinks of climate change and the agri-food sector is climate smart agriculture. I mean, it is a developing conversation. It is perhaps still fraught with controversy, um, and it really requires us to together work towards a commonality for what it means and what the implications are, particularly in our context. But it is a thing that cannot be ignored. When one thinks about it, the overarching objective really of climate smart agriculture is to increase productivity of farmers, and one wouldn't uh, really, when one thinks of agri-tech, a growth in productivity is generally one of those main objectives of innovating. Um, However, the additional nuance of climate smart agriculture is that when one thinks of an increase in productivity, one also needs to think at the same time of building resilience into the agricultural practices of smallholder farmers to mitigate against those climate challenges that we spoke about that disproportionately affect smallholder farmers, while at the same time exploring and exploiting opportunities to reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, particularly when you think when you consider agriculture. Agriculture is both a contributor and a potential mitigator of greenhouse gases. So it would be worthwhile to have the conversation of how one now puts these two opposing sides together, and using agri-tech materialize, or at least a, create the environment for farmers to operate in this fashion. So, as a summary, really, climate smart agriculture is an approach that is designed to transform agriculture by way of increasing productivity, while at the same time exploiting opportunities to mitigate against climate change and also reduce greenhouse gases in the environment. So, of course, when one then, oh, we can go to the next slide, please, Ape. So Apple already alluded to the fact that there has been a decline in investment in this area. And this is referring to recent years, but really broadly, when one looks at it, there is a significant deficit in the financing that goes towards the agri-food sector on the continent. It is estimated around up to 65 million. And generally, when one looks at a GDP spending of different governments, on average, governments spend 4.1% of GDP towards agri. Excuse me, I had timed myself. I'm a little bit over time.
So,
So, and when you consider how important the agri-food sector is for the continent, that 4.1% is woefully low as a figure invested towards agriculture. We can go to the next one, please, Ape, while I finish off. So then that brings us to the next conversation then, which is the fuel of climate smart agriculture, and that is the carbon credit market. The way the carbon credit market has grown significantly in recent years. It is estimated that it will grow even further going into the future up to 2032. and it represents a new and emerging opportunity to unlock finance towards agri-innovation, agri-food innovation, in addition to the pools of capital that are already available in the market. And the 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 additional advantage, I suppose, of climate of carbon credit market as a catalyst to driving capital towards agriculture is that it's so far-reaching, isn't it? Because it has regulatory implications. So governments are regulating the area of almost compelling spending in this area. It has a voluntary component where large global organizations have an appreciation for the need, at least, to be involved in securing our sustainability in the future, and also recognizing that agriculture is this huge opportunity to help us towards that because it has those complexities of adding to climate change and also have an opportunity to reduce in climate change while at the same time helping us towards our developmental objectives. I'm not going to have an opportunity to go too deep into what actually the carbon credit market is, but if you can just go to the next slide, Ape. If I were to summarize what my argument is today, is that agritech really is how agriculture as a whole sector is going to realize the potential to help us develop our continent, to become globally competitive and really play on an equal footing with the rest of the globe. And agritech should, in fact, drive climate smart agriculture. I mean, as controversial as that statement sounds, but if we think of the objective of climate smart agriculture, which is growth and productivity, climate change mitigation, and reducing greenhouse gases, I don't know if there would be arguments against agritech being the driver towards that sort of behavior in the ecosystem. We also know that agri is very attractive for climate investors because of those multiple facets that we've already discussed, and that the carbon market is an enormous, enormous opportunity to unlock investment in agri-tech and almost bridge that gap between what we are spending towards agri at this point in Africa, a bridge that 65 billion USD divide that is estimated in our ecosystem. So I think that's where I will leave it. We can put up our concluding slide. Everyone is welcome to get in touch if they want to discuss any of the elements in the presentation. Yeah, I really look forward to the developments that we make APE as ecosystem builders to encourage our cohorts, or at least our networks, in this area of climate smart agriculture.
Thanks very much. Yeah, thanks very much, Flo. That's very wonderful. We're going to have some time to discuss some of these points, issues you've raised, and after Akin's presentation. So if you have any question for Flo or for anybody, or a general question that you want us to discuss, feel free to leave them in the comment, and we'll be able to pick them up during the panel discussion to have a look at them, see how we can, rub our minds together. So our next speaker is Akin. So I'll bring him up. Hi, Akin.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, and your slide is
well. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, great. I mean, it's been interesting and insightful listening to you present this presentation, and of course listening to Flo as well. I must really also commend you guys for this platform that you've created to be able to share knowledge and also connect with other innovators within the agri-tech space. So today I'm just going to just narrow down to innovative trends that we've seen, within the agri-tech space, and just also sharing some thoughts around, how we could, build in order to address some of our local challenges, within our African context. You've done justice to introducing me, so I don't need to, talk about that. I've always been like, even though I'm more of a generalist in terms of providing support to innovators across different verticals. I have this leaning towards supporting innovators within the agri-tech space because um, they are critical players in ensuring our security, in terms of both food security for sustenance and also the overall economic development, particularly as it relates to Africa and addressing our burgeoning population issues. So when we look across, right, there are a number of challenges that we've seen, you know, um, across the agricultural sector in Africa that will begin to see agricultural technology innovations addressing. I have a laundry list of some of the challenges that you're familiar with. I know for as many people that are actually in the space that are on the call today, you will agree with me that low productivity is a major issue. Sustainable farming methods, which been practiced for years and are not yielding so much. Inadequate knowledge of nutrient management, which is very very essential. To optimizing yield from farmlands. Climate change vulnerability. We've seen entire farmland, farmlands actually, in fact, entire village being submerged due to climate change impacts, floodings and all of that, taking over essential areas being used for farmland. Limited market access. Today, the post-harvest losses are essentially, increasing because of the limited market access. Not that there are no demands, there are demands, but because there are no connection between those that are doing the production and the market that they need to serve. Lack of financial resources, limited funding available both for production and for processing, insufficient technology adoption. This is a major headache. You still see farmers who are still using the archaic methods, on their farm. They are not able to even leverage technology to connect with people that needs, the solutions. They are not able to use technology to even do basic analysis that will help them, optimize their yields. Post-harvest losses, I've mentioned that. A lot of our fruits goes to waste, even our tubers, which is really sad. Unfavorable consumer trends. As the macroeconomic, metrics changes, the external environment factor affecting people's purchasing power, we see that also impacting ability to consume some of this farm produce. Then, of course, the rural-urban migration, which is happening not just in Nigeria, where we have the largest population, in Africa. It's also happening, across major cities, in Africa. People moving from where the core farming activities are happening to wanting to be part of the bustling that is happening in the main cities. And all of these are all impacting, you know, um, the agricultural sector and the productivity from the sector. But the interesting thing is that with, agri-tech innovations
Yeah.
that are localized for our needs, we are really able to still, in a way, navigate those problems, solve those problems in such a way that we can still boost, our productivity and guarantee, food security for our increasing population. So let's just take a deep dive into some of those interesting emerging innovative trends that we've seen, not just in Africa, but across the world. First is precision agriculture. The world today has moved beyond just sowing blindly. There is now opportunity to be able to really analyze different soil where the actual cultivations are happening, to know what's the nutrient level, what does it contain, what's the nitrate level, what's the moisture level, and all of this, because these are things that really determines how much of yield a particular soil, is really going to produce. And what we begin to see is that you see startups like, Farmseas, which has also gone ahead to raise significant funds. I mean, it's an India startup, that has this soil spectra that is able to help you measure, all of these various soil parameters, that we're talking about. And interestingly, we also have some of the local startups, in Africa, like Kutivo, for example, in Nigeria, that are already carrying out soil analysis and helping farmers to understand, what some of these metrics look like, before they actually plant in that soil. So if our farmers are able to understand technologies like this and begin to use them, definitely their production is really going to significantly, increase. Another interesting one, it's around the use of drone. The use of drone and satellite mapping, to really understand what's happening within a particular sphere. So we've seen application of drones in, applying fertilizer, in even applying different so for example, in fact, there was one interesting conversation I was having with one of the robotics company, and they were saying that with the rising insecurity that is leading to significant reduction in production,
Yeah.
particularly in regions like Nigeria, and maybe like in Mali and some other, Burkina Faso, and all that we could actually leverage drones to track the movement of those people. So what it means by implication is that instead of having, human tracker, so again, it's an infusion of both security and, farming happening here.
Mm.
Instead of having, farmers being caught unguarded, in their farmland. So they are afraid they can't farm because of those people coming around and all that. So you could have drones that are actually monitoring for them.
Mm.
So when there is danger, the drones, send the sensors for dangers, and they know that, hey, this is time to run to our strong room or to our safe house, and all of that, or to call the securities to, to their heads, right? But essentially, we've seen drones being used to, to map out lands. For example, part of the things that you can actually track with application of drone is how much of afforestation is happening in a particular area, or how much of deforestation is happening in a particular area. You're able to use heat maps, to do all of those things. So these are important applications, that we need to start thinking about, as tech innovators on the continent, to say, how can we better leverage data from drones? What kind of data can drone collect that will be relevant for us? What are the various applications of drones that we can use in order to actually make agriculture, better? Then there is also the data platforms, which actually provide accessible, actionable data for smallholders farmers to make, informed decisions. There's an interesting thing that High Cow in Kenya, they're doing. They have this wearable devices, that of course are connected to, to an app that they've developed, that animal farmers can actually wear around their cows, that measures the temperatures, measures all of those things. So easily it can trigger when the body temperature of an animal is going out of proportion,
Yeah.
and can tell you specifically which animal it is, the location of the animal, you can track it down, so that you can quickly apply whatever, medicine or, care that is necessary, to such animal. And also isolate the animal in case it's an infectious disease, that it's spreading the body of that animal, such that at the end of the day, there is no significant loss, the way it happens to a lot of, cattle rearers and ranch owners, and all that. So these are interesting things that we're beginning to see that help improve the quality of productions, in Africa, and we can get more of this. The other thing is also vertical farming. Right. So while we think about Africa, yes, we have the land, we have, all the spaces and all that. But now that we're beginning to also see the restriction in the spaces that we can use for farming, then we now need to start, innovating around creating more spaces for farming within our cities. So, for example, when you take Lagos, for example, in Nigeria, population of about 22, some other states, you know in some other regions that are just about 2 million, 1 million, you know, that we consume in Southwest is coming from. Of course, we have places like maybe Ogun State, that is a neighboring state to Lagos, where people can access some farmlands, but not as significant as you have in some of those other. And when you think about the climate condition also of those places in northern Nigeria, where certain particular crops grows best, right? You don't find such climate or weather condition to support the development of such crops, in southern part or in southern part, of the country. So what it means is that we need to now think about different ways to grow our produce in such a way that we're creating controlled environment, for such produce in order to be able to maintain yield, all year round. And these are things that we're beginning to see. For example, even in Ogun State, there is a farm lab called Soilless Farm Lab. And what they're beginning to do is to say that, hey, even though there are certain soils that are more conducive for certain plants to grow, they found a way to realize that, okay, there's a way you can have a mix of some of these shafts, be it from rice or coconut, or that mix that together to create like the artificial soil for this produce, such that you can grow them within the greenhouse. So you mix the nutrients, mix all of that, create the artificial irrigation around it, and use that to create the various vegetables, fruits, and all that you need. And they've experimented with it, and it's working already. This is in Nigeria. It's not even abroad. Of course, the biggest kind of hydroponic or vertical farms that we've seen, it's in New Jersey, in the US. Where they have this gigantic, farm space that use 95% less water than the traditional farm will require, in order to grow different plants. So these are some of the things that we need to start, looking at. These are areas that investors, can start putting their money in order to actually create certain products that can be targeted at premium market. One of the things that it's really gaining significant traction right now, it's the organic market, for both for creams, for different ointments and all that, because now we're beginning to see that we need to do more of a lot of herbs and all that than just depending on how the various medicine typically. So because of that, there is now opportunity for premium markets, for herbs, for some of these vegetables and ointments and all. So there is really opportunity for products that comes out of this vertical farming. Then we have the waste management and upcycling, which is also another very interesting area where we're seeing the application of, agri technology, turning agricultural waste into value. We've seen biofuel production, which ranges from using things like waste from poultry, to generate biogas, to even using waste from ranches to generate biogas. So it's now about bringing in the technology. I have one of those very young innovators, that was supporting. In fact, she was one of the winners of one of the TV, reality shows for entrepreneurs, that was concluded in December. She was actually the first runners up, and she had this system that she's built in partnership with a poultry farm. So she has an arrangement with them to take all of their produce, all the waste rather, from the poultry farm, and right there on the farm, she has a site where she does the processing of those waste into gas that she now more like package in smaller, at different various I mean, quite an innovative way, to go about. If you have access to the raw materials, which are the waste, then you're able to sell to, both households, and she's planning to be able to scale that to selling to hotels and all that. So those are just interesting, innovative ideas that young, innovative Africans are beginning to put, to use. And I was in Vienna last November, and I met this young lady, and what she's doing is she's making straw out of, out of rice waste, out of, the waste from rice. She makes straw, out of that. And when you think about that, the straw can stay for about, I think, about 9 hours. After you use it in a drink, I mean, no matter how bad it is, you can't take a drink for 9 hours. You probably just finish it within an hour and all that. But the straw can stay in the drink for about 9 hours, before it melts. But the good thing is that it's 100%, biodegradable. When you're done with it, you just throw it in the soil, and it just decomposes over few weeks, right? So these are interesting things that people are doing. And of course, in India, we see Biolutens, which is like a German company that's moved to India to see how they can start using different wastes, different, particularly the rice straw waste, and processing it into packaging materials, right? So these are some of the things that we can think around, we can build around, that can attract investment, to the Africa ecosystem. Then the other thing is platforms, right? And I think this is where we're also beginning to see some of our, agri-tech that are really thriving very well. The platforms where farmers can have access to knowledge, they can have access to, inputs, they can have access to, to off-takers, they can have access to, financial services. I think one of the very first platform that really got attraction or investment, out of our continent, Farm Crowdy, was playing in the platform space when they started, before they pivoted, and a platform like, a startup like Thrive Agri, for example, is really doing very well in helping the smallholders farmers have access to, to input, to the support service, and most importantly, the financing that they need in order to, do their production. And when you look at, the investment received in the last couple of years, I think Thrive Agri did almost about 56 million US dollars, in funding, in their last run. So these are emerging opportunities. We have platforms like the Traders of Africa, that provides that matching between, the smallholders farmers, or those that are like fronting for them, and the people that need their produce across the African continent. I mean, they are active in about 19 countries, in Africa, where this trading it's really happening, and just purely farm produce, from different areas for those that need them. Another interesting example is Hello Tractor. Hello Tractor, Thrive Agri, Traders of Africa. These are innovators that have supported, as a startup support expert. For Hello Tractor, for example, they have these unique platforms where farmers can come and actually request for affordable tractor services, for a short time. So while previously people are limited because they only have traditional tools to cultivate land, so they might have access to large acre of land, but they don't have the capacity to be able to do it, at a go. But now they have access to, platform like Hello Tractor, where they can hire, tractor for a particular period that they need it, at a discounted amount, because they are only doing that for a particular period. And this has increased the yield, of those farmers, because now they are able to do 40 times faster, at a rate that is, over 2 times cheaper than they could do. And the interesting thing is the participation of investors too in this space. So you can come in to work with Hello Tractor as investors, investing in the tractors that are being offered for services, or you can actually come in to provide, credit facilities. So these are interesting things that we're beginning to see that are also attractive to investors. For example, Hello Tractor got like 1.5, about $1 million US, in 2022 through the HIFO program because the model they run is very attractive. And now recently, they've just gotten some additional funding in partnership, with some major international development organization, just this year. So they are opening new centers and all that, and their platform is becoming stronger, and they are getting, more value for it. So in the nutshell, we just need more innovative solutions. We need more people to think about, how they can address this gap. We do a lot of complaining, right? We do a lot of, because yes, it's okay. Things are not as we want it to be in terms of, government support and all of that. But the more we think about innovative solutions, the more we look at things that are happening and we begin to build for local context, the more results begin to see. So I will summarize it by saying that, when we look at things like investment in precision technology, these are opportunities for investment here. Regenerative agriculture incentives, platform development, upcycling, the carbon credits that Flo mentioned, that's a major emerging business, that can attract investment, in Africa. You build the platforms, you're able to identify smallholders farmers that are going to be doing the tree planting for you. You build a platform where you can have access to, the large corporate organizations that want to buy carbon credits, and you're able to leverage the fund to get the smallholders farmers to build. All you just need to be able to do is to validate to the corporate organizations that they're actually tree planting going on. And once you build a system to validate that, that's a huge opportunity that someone can leverage, and you can scale it. So in the nutshell, there are real opportunities that are worthy of investment. Truth be told, the investment in the space really dropped or dipped last year, and it wasn't just for Agtech. It was across the various sectors. Generally, last year wasn't a good year for investment, particularly in Nigeria, as it is so across the world. But what we saw was that there were countries that were behind in terms of the tractions that we gained. For example, in 2022, we did about 1.2 billion US dollars, leading the entire investment, flow in Africa. But in 2023, that dipped significantly. It's just about 600, and we now have, some other members of the big four, leading the pack. But it's clear that our external environment was not appropriate for any investment, at that time. But with the new policies we're seeing, so there's going to be more investment coming to Nigeria, more investment coming into Kenya, more investment going to Egypt, and that's we're going to be seeing as we'll begin to see innovative solutions, particularly across these areas that has been highlighted. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the interactive sessions, and I'm hoping to questions from everyone. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Akin. That's quite wonderful and insightful at the same time. And I really enjoyed some of the insight that you raised. So I'll hand over to Wale to take over from here. And Flo, if you're there, probably if you can have your.
Thank you, Akin.
If you can have your. Good.
Hi. There might be a bit of a connection issue.
Probably from listen, I can see it looks like there's a little bit of connection issue. Okay, so it's good that two of us are here. One person can stand in for the other. So I'll just maybe continue and hope that Wale will be able to come back again and take over from me. So thanks everyone for a very wonderful conversation we've had so far. I really enjoy everybody's contribution to the conversation, and to me, I think that the summary of everything that we've said today is that there's opportunity, for the Agtech space in Africa. There is a huge opportunity to make a difference, to be the leading sector that can, drive the change that Africa really, really needs. And so, for me, I look forward to having the opportunity to, be part of that journey. And I guess everyone also on the call, looking forward to that opportunity as well. Wale is trying to join back in. Probably bring him back. Let's see.
Is it better now?
Well, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. So thank you, Flo and Aki, and also for advocating for Deji. And it's been quite interesting conversations that we have had this morning. We have a couple of questions, and I think I would like to start with Flo. In what practical ways do you think that smallholders can be enabled to be part of the carbon credits activities? Because already they are struggling with productivity, they are struggling with access to market, and now we begin to talk about carbon credits. How are we going to be able to infuse that into the already existing struggles and make it something worthwhile for them?
Yes. So, and I mean, I do note you're separating the two audiences or groups of people somehow, in that there is the smallholder producer and then there's the innovator, right? So, who impacts the smallholder producer? So for the smallholder producer, I think information, I think it would be where we should probably start, because we imagine some of the things that speak to climate smart agriculture to be complex, which is not necessary. I'll tell you an example. I have a mentee. She has a farm, and she's producing vegetables, and she had gone to a different agribusiness to buy seedlings for the brinjals or eggplants. And so when I'm asking her about the performance of the eggplants, she's really, really happy. This is what she's going to focus on because it did so well, etc., etc. And we're trying to track the process now of how she got to produce such a good quality crop. And she started, of course, with the seedling. And she said the seedling is really quite unique. And it has some stuff. She called it some stuff, some black stuff. She's like, they produce it at the back of the farm in some metal container. Just not being aware that, in fact, that the stuff that they put in those seedlings is biochar. And the benefits that she has obviously experienced of biochar being included in the seedling mix of the seedlings that she used. And also a kind of awareness that actually she can also make biochar in the back of her house, and how she would go about doing that if that's what she wanted to do. And that not only positions her to produce a really good crop because of the agronomic benefits, of course, of biochar, but now suddenly she's sequestering carbon. She's not only capturing carbon by producing the biochar from whatever material, whether it's waste or whatever, wood or whatever it is, capturing that carbon, but then putting it in the ground in that seedling mix, then sequestering the carbon essentially forever in the ground. For her, that does not register as carbon sequestration or anything related to carbon credits, but she is doing it already without knowing. So that kind of bridging the information gap would be key. And for innovators, then because of course it makes no sense for every single smallholder farmer to go and try to register for carbon credits and this and this and that. That's just inefficient. So for the innovator, I would say that smallholder farmers are ready to employ the technology. When it makes sense, they are ready to employ it, because all they're experiencing is the benefits on their farms. We just need to create that environment for that to happen, whether it's through aggregation, whether it's through platforms, you mentioned platforms, or really kind of various ways of enabling farmers to do what they do, but because they'd be sequestering carbon in their daily doing of what they do, then have access to a whole other avenue of attracting capital. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, I think that there's also need to keep people informed of some of these opportunities and processes that exist to them. I will come back to you, Flo. So, Akin, one of the key drivers for investment, I would say, is being investment ready. And we have seen people in other form of enterprises outside of agriculture finding it easy to be ready for investment.
Hmm.
But for those who are in agriculture, it's some kind of challenge. Even to get the basic form of
Mm.
Can't hear Wale again.
Yeah, I think it's hanging. So I guess the summary of the question is how Agtech entrepreneurs can be investment ready.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I guess where Wale is going with the question is how can innovators within the agri-tech space can be investor ready, just like some other key sectors that are attracting significant funding.
Hmm.
I think it starts from having a very clear business model. Typically, investors want to be sure of how the solution you have is really going to make money. You know, yes, there are impact investors that are very keen about solving societal problems. So when we talk about the financial inclusion, the food security, supporting smallholder farmers, just looking at different opportunity to solve societal problems and make impact, you know, um, access to education, all of that. But whichever way, they are still also keen about being able to make return on their investment. And that's why there has to be a very clear business model. How are you going to generate your own revenue and make profit from what you're doing? You know, are you offering a platform as a service, or are you going to be very, very asset heavy? For example, if you're going to be building code rooms across, different locations, it means that you're really going to be very asset heavy, and that in
Necessary.
itself, you know, so what model do you want to use to ensure that you are not asset heavy? That's the whole idea. So if you
Hmm.
create a platform, for example, where you are able to connect farmers with code room operators or code room owners, you know, that's it's a that's a good model. They will tell you that, oh, okay, maybe Uber for farmers or Uber for storage, that kind of a thing. So it's a platform where you're connecting those that have the physical structure with those that actually need the service, right? So when they clearly see that what you have is a platform, for a platform, it's very easy to scale compared to the person that is building physical infrastructure for code room and trying to serve, you know, if you look at just the West Africa region, for example, if you want to build code rooms across Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, you want to serve all of those markets, then you think about how much you need to invest. Even Nigeria, for you to do across 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, is going to be. But when you say what you're building is a platform where individuals that have these infrastructures across different locations can plug in what they have, and you now connect them with the smallholders farmers, that's a platform. So we need to think more about enabling, right? When when it comes to things that are actually very, very asset heavy. Now, there are now some very interesting hard tech parts, where the whole, drone comes in, mobility comes in, and all of that. Now, what you want to be able to do with those model is to show sustainability. So there is clear value that you've identified that you are adding to these farmers, to these smallholders farmers, or maybe adding to the produce that comes from those farms, such that maybe it's preserved, the freshness is preserved, or you're doing all of those. But what you now need to be able to show is that that is sustainable, because beyond the viability of a business, beyond the viability of a business, we want to see that the business is sustainable, it's scalable. That's what investors want to see. So if you have a model that is not scalable, then you're not going to attract investment. You see, the interesting thing is that a lot of these investors, part of the challenge that they have is they have limited knowledge around certain spaces. So the same way we struggle with investors investing in agri-tech innovation, we also struggle with them investing in head tech innovations, right? Because these are key areas where if government have come into, to do a lot of investment, on their own part, a lot of the structural problem would have been alleviated significantly, right? So innovators are now doing something that is more sophisticated and not solving structural problems, right? So for example, when you look across Africa, there's a basic logistics problem that we have. Assuming we have all of those railroads that connect northern part to southern part, western part to eastern part, such that there is that movement that can happen seamlessly. So it's easier to build a core system into a rail that comes from maybe northern part to southern part, and delivers good easily. But in this case, we don't have such straight journeys, right? So individuals need to make provision for their logistics themselves. So they have to take care of those problems themselves, which are hard problems, to solve. So while you're creating the cooling system, fitting in the Internet of Things where you can track and monitor, real time what the temperature within that system is, that is being, that is transporting goods from maybe northern part to southern part, then you have to think about the security. That, now we have this huge truck with huge, technology feature that ensures that by the time this good arrives from that distance, it's still in good condition. But what about if there is a hijack on the way by bandits? What happens? So you see all of those broad range of challenges that investors think about before they sink in their money, into some of those solutions, because there are structural problems, right? So we'll keep advocating. We keep advocating to see how government can help and all that, But I think basically, if people are able to come up with some of these solutions that are tailored for different locales, that the model that they run in a particular local, a particular area, can be scaled to other parts of Africa with the same similar conditions, similar, challenges, then it becomes a good sell, to this investor. So meaning that I can take a model that you've applied in Nigeria and go to a market like Kenya and still scale, the same model, then it becomes more attractive. You might not be serving the entire Nigeria for me to want to invest into you. But what I see that what you are doing, maybe in northern Nigeria, that is working in northern Nigeria, I can take to maybe like southern Kenya and it's working. Then I can take to, so that's the whole idea. How scalable is it? You don't need to serve the entire 220 million population. You just need to serve significant population that guarantees that you are making good return on investment. And we can take your model to another area where we can utilize it. And that makes it very easy to scale. So yes, first is clear business model, being able to define what exactly is the business of the startup that you are building or the innovation that you are building. Second is to test for the viability of that solution. Third is to test for the scalability, or the sustainability. And once these things are checked, then it's easier to even get investors in the room and for them to make investments.
Well, good stuff. Beautiful. Wale, are you still there? Or you want me to continue? All right, so I think I'll continue. I have one question for Flo again. So climate smart agriculture, like you clearly mentioned, would be a key driver. Investors would want to an extent, ensure that where they are putting their money into is, is also contributing to environmental sustainability and all that. So, what trainings or training opportunities are available for agtech entrepreneurs to, become climate smart agriculture compliant, so that they will be ready if an investor comes up and says, "What is your where do you stand in terms of climate smart agriculture with your innovation or with other things that you're doing?" Because to a lot of young people or young innovators, when you talk about climate smart agriculture, I believe that not everyone understands what that means. You've done justice to that with your presentation, but again, what are the training opportunities? Is government doing anything? Is the ecosystem doing anything? Are the entrepreneurs themselves going out there to look for opportunities to get trained and stuff like that? So are you able to maybe talk to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, of course, keeping in mind that this is really quite nascent, this conversation. So one should expect that we are still at that building stage where we are even still attempting to find common language, or even common measuring tools, so it's still early days. I've seen quite a bit of research in the area. Like I know in South Africa, our Agricultural Research Council has published various documents, have done various segments of research. They've even convened a summit around the area of climate smart agriculture, which is great. I know the large DFIs, global DFIs, are also really quite active in supporting information dissemination in this area. Like, for example, GIZ is doing some work over there. The European Union is doing some work in that area. But actually, I think the little bit of a gap, or at least where there needs to be a little bit of catching up, is with us, the ecosystem builders, because there is no reason why that kind of injection of climate smart thinking in agribusinesses can't follow the normal process of developing agripreneurs within incubation, within acceleration, or all of that.
Yeah.
We need to come to the party when it comes to putting together the information pieces, contextualizing the information pieces for entrepreneurs, because there is a whole world out there. And kind of leading them into a funnel through which they can identify the specific areas that are relevant for their own production systems or their own locations. Because, of course, in as much as one would want to implement everything because everything is good, that's just not the case. There are contextual nuances that need to be considered, etc. So I've put the challenge really in our courts.
Back to the ecosystem. Ecosystem builder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Yeah. Well, interesting. So, Ale, are you
I can
back?
see an idea ringing in your mind, Ape. Yeah.
I'm just thinking. That's interesting. Yeah. Anyway, Wale, are you back? Okay, Wale is back, but he's still, having network issues. So I have one more question for Akin, and then I'll come back to Flo for a closing remark about this, and then we'll come back again to Akin for a closing remark. But let me check with Wale and see if he's ready to go. Yeah, it doesn't look like he's ready to go. So I can. The question I have here is, what's hindering the penetration of? I have a a a document of Agtech innovation in Australia, and is a full list of what is happening in the Agtech space, solving different problems, many of them. And these things are not. It's not as if they are hidden. The knowledge, the innovation, they are not hidden, but the level of penetration within the African Agtech space is not. And I might be wrong. This might be my personal thinking, but I don't think it's the penetration is that fast, or would I say the adoption is not that fast? So I'm not talking about adoption really. I'm talking about young people who are into ag tech. You know, allowing this to be a solution that they can leverage on to create how do I put it? Allowing these to be ideas that they can leverage on rather to create solution for the sector. So my question is, what do you think are the limiting factors for a faster penetration of innovation within the agtech space?
Hmm.
Thanks for the question, Ape. I mean, just like Flo highlighted, concluding by saying that the actors need to do more, you know, in order for us to see more impacts within climate smart agriculture. I would say that generally, right? When you think about it from cultural perspective, agriculture has never been like the sexy thing to do. Permit me to use that word, particularly for young people. Across Africa, they rather want to be part of. Now just taking out the elements of the technology, just thinking about the agriculture as a sector. A
Mm,
lot of young people rather want to work in the financial services, want to work in consulting, investment banking, all of those seemingly sexy areas, right? So there is still a lot of advocacy work, knowledge sharing that needs to happen, and also incentives from government that needs to happen to motivate young people to get into that space.
mm,
And not just incentive from government, there's also need for international development organization to begin to rethink how they are providing support for the space, to now start including budget for hard tech innovations in their support budget for the space.
mm,
Yeah, there are a lot of organizations that commit significant funds into seed research, into supporting smallholders farmers with fertilizers and all that. But when you look at the entire fund that goes into the agricultural sector for development and ensuring food security, a very tiny percentage of that is what is set aside for innovation within the space. And speaking from, an operator of, startup enabling, perspective, when I look at the various programs I've had to run over the years with different organizations, the fundings for them and all that, the agri-tech innovation is probably like less than 5% of the funding when you look at it sectoral base,
mm,
you know, over the years. There have been a few actors that have been very intentional about investing in, agri-tech innovation. An organization like HIFA, for example, have been very intentional about supporting innovators in that space. When you think about what they are doing and the impact that they're beginning to make, because they are very focused on ensuring that the innovators support, make impact, which includes getting substantial investment from them and supporting them to even assess, further rounds of investment, post their own initial funding, right? When you take what they're doing, for example, there are no other organizations, I may be wrong, that are really operating at that scale of supporting high tech innovations. And more of them we need, particularly within the Africa, ecosystem. So I feel there is that need to be intentional about signing funds to agri-tech innovation.
Yeah.
There is the part that the government needs to play, which is providing incentives to innovators within that space. Because without having incentives in forms of, again, it might be in form of competition and putting aside funds for winners of those competitions to be able to build those innovative solutions, right? So it's not like free money per se. You are rewarding innovation,
Mhm.
right? But most importantly, providing funding for those innovators to be able to, build pilots, because investors want to see that whatever it is that they want to put their money in, there is a proven pilot that you have done. So it's not like you have a pitch deck. They can see that you've moved from just having a pitch deck to having a minimum viable product
Yeah.
that you have tested out. So then they can now say, okay, we want to support you, to build out or and address the market that you're looking to address. So there's that incentive from government that needs to come, right? I've talked about the role of development organization, and the other part is role of organizations like yourself. you know um, when you look across the landscape, while we have some very sector agnostic, incubators and accelerators that focus on education, as we're beginning to see in recent times, that focus on healthcare, as we begin to see in recent times, we have very few that thinks about agri-tech as a vertical to focus on, right? So what you probably see is the general smallholders farmer support organization, that help them with testing, knowledge dissemination, all of that. But to say you're focusing on agri-tech innovators, where you're providing opportunity for maybe like a fab lab, or a lab where they can do prototype, providing that human-centered design approach, support for them, providing testers, maybe like community of practice of smallholders farmers who can provide
Yes.
feedback for them, all of those things. We don't have that.
Yeah.
We don't have that. And these are things that, an organization or a firm like yourself needs to start thinking of, diving into, so that as you strengthen your position within that vertical, leveraging, of course, inputs from development organization, from other partners, and you working with the smallholders farmers who can provide like test bed for the innovators, it is easier to now start scaling innovation
Yeah.
within that space. So you think about it from a network effect,
Mm.
right? So but you are that center as the major player galvanizing the other actors who will stimulate that network effect. Until we become very focused, very intentional about building that vertical, the Agtech innovation vertical, we won't be seeing a lot of innovations coming out of Africa.
Yeah.
Because what we still currently see right now is that when you look across all the various incubators, accelerators that we have on the continent, they only delve into hard tech verticals when they have a partner that is interested in providing fund
Yeah.
to support innovators in that area. So
Yeah.
once that funding circle closes out, then they close the chapter of the hard tech and
And
move
go
on
back
to
and
business,
go back to their normal thing. Yeah.
to
Fintech.
business as usual. So, but we have the opportunity to keep reusing the lesson learned, to further developing innovators within the hard tech, space, which I think is a part of the reasons why what you guys are doing is very unique. There has to be these continuous conversations happening. There has to be opportunity for innovators to also showcase what they've got and get
Mm.
feedback, from the farmers, feedback from major operators, and also give them opportunity to showcase what they've got to people like the telcos. The telcos can play a significant role in helping these innovators to drive what you're doing. For example, when you look at what's happening in Kenya, there are a lot of the information that the farmers are accessing that's being delivered through the M-Pesa platform.
Yeah.
So when you think about how players like the telcos can strengthen what is happening within the agri-tech verticals. But if there is no major player at the center of the network galvanizing all of these efforts, it's really going to be very difficult, to leverage all of those key players to build. So I think I'm also putting it back the way Flo, Flo said, to key players, like yourself within that particular vertical, to just rethink them, to see how you can galvanize more players, within the network in order to create that network effect that the Agtech
Absolutely.
innovators need, to
Yeah.
build
And I
and
would
scale.
probably add to your very well spoken statement that we should probably also think more Pan African than, more global. You know, the whole adage of global, think more
Yeah.
Pan
Yeah,
African, solving micro problems. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with you 100%.
So, Ape, I don't think we need to ask for any more closing remark. They've just thrown the ball back to us. So we need to we need
Yeah.
to we need to see how we more. But of course, we'll be happy to come back to you both to see how we can really do some of these things. It just takes me back to the early days when we started out here. We I remember then we used to imagine just sitting down on some acreage of land and have people come to try their innovations out and really have something practical to showcase what they are developing. We hope that in our lifetime we'll get there, and if we can't get there in our lifetime, we set the pace or we at least set the foundation for others to able to do something. Thank you both for coming on board. Apologies for my network. It's part of the innovations we need to solve in some part of the world that gets better. But it's really been exciting conversations, and like you said, it's something we need to keep having from time to time and see how we can also contribute our bit to use technology to bring the sector to where it should be. And like Flo just said, it's something that can be used across multiple regions. The challenges are not any different. It's just the people and the environments that are a bit different. But whatever can work here will probably work in Ghana, will work in Togo, probably also in some Southern African countries like Mozambique, where they also have very small enterprises, not commercial, as some part of South Africa and the like. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights, and we hope that we can all continue to keep these conversations alive. And as we also make progress, we'll bring you back on board to say, oh, this is how far we have gone. And if there are other ecosystem players that you can also connect us with, we'll be happy to be connected with them to see what we can do together.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you both
you.
for having
Aben,
us.
final words? Yeah.
Well, that's you rounded up the whole session very beautifully. The only thing I have to say is um, for those who would be, watching a replay of these, if they want to get in touch with us, we'll be happy and willing to listen to them. Like I said when we started today, our website is there, up and running, and with all the information that is needed about us. But that's not enough. Anyone is free to get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to take up the conversation from there with them. So thanks again, Flo, and thanks, Akin. Nice to meet you, Akin, for the first time. And sorry, Deji couldn't join the conversation, but we're grateful he was able to send in his slides. In the future, we hope he'll be able to make it in person.
Thanks, Aper.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Pleasure meeting. Yeah. Take
Yeah,
care.
sure. It's really good. We should connect actually.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
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 That's one of the reasons, to have something like this, to be able to keep connecting and building the network.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank
Have a good
you.
Thanks,
weekend.
everyone. Have a beautiful day, and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.